get this situated where I can see your bio. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining again with the Euphonium Summit for through Farm for Dreams. I have Amy Schumaker Bliss with me today, and she's a really amazing woman euphonium artist who has inspired thousands upon thousands across this globe, including her podcast and such like that. I'd like to introduce her to you. And Dr. Amy Bliss has built a career that combines her love for performing with the love of teaching music. As a performer, Amy is always busy creating new projects. She released her latest album, Couleurs in Movements, in 2019. I hope that I pronounced that right. And she is featured on two of Atlantic Brass Band's CDs, The Spirit of Christmas and Metropolis. She has recently featured soloists with Rowan University's Wind Band, Gordon Jacobs Fantasia, which is a staple for euphonium. So if you're artist level, student level artist through high school, check that solo out. Great. Check out that recording. Phenomenal. Rowan University's Wind Ensemble, the Cosma Euphonium Concerto, which is a stout repertoire standard, by the way. And a featured artist at the International Women's Brass Conference. She's always referred to through all the women's brass conferences, but specifically that one, 2017. She plays solo euphonium in the Dublin Silver Band and Athena Brass Band, an all-star British brass band featuring women brass and percussion players from around the world. She recently has collaborated with Kent State University for the Wind Ensemble premiere of Lucy Pankhurst's Luminatius from 2021, Athena Brass Band for a performance of Peter Graham's Brillante at the Midwest Band and Orchestra Clinic in 2021, Lancaster Allegro Symphony for the orchestral premiere of Seven When, Derek Kane's Euphonium Concerto just last year, and this upcoming winter, she'll be preparing the brass band arrangement of Luminati's with the San Francisco Brass Band at the California Music Educators Association Conference. Now, she has a whole lot more to her. If you want to dive in, I'll leave the links below to amybliss.net/about. Just check that in. If you have any, if you're one of her biggest fans, leave a shout out below and show her encouragement that this is indeed a impactful person in your life. That would be amazing to see and to get to know your personal testimonies about Dr. Bliss and what she has brought to you and or your students in your life. Amy, Dr. Bliss, thank you for joining the Euphonium Summit for Farm for Dreams. And I'm Nicholas Hopter von Heide, your host. Let's get this interview started, shall we?
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. I think this is a fantastic idea and it feels so official with like my official background. Check it out. I love it.
I really appreciate the encouragement and, stepping out and reaching out to all the artists and professionals, even those that, as on the first interview that I've done and conducted for this summit, was a high school senior who started his own nonprofit. Reaching out to low brass community, offering free lessons. Mm-hmm. It's just mind-blowing what a time we live in. I mean, you mm-hmm. even have a podcast, you have 2 children's books, featuring brass bands, books, euphonium. What? I really want to start there. What had to cross your mind to write a children's book about brass bands and your history? What bring us across that bridge?
I like that phrase, bring us across that bridge. Well, when my first son was born, obviously people got us all of these toys and tons of them were musical because clearly I'm a musician. And I noticed I didn't see myself in any of them. They were all orchestral. And there were no euphoniums. Um, and I saw um most of the toys had animals playing the instruments, but the ones that had people playing the instruments, it was mostly boys playing the instruments. And then third, I just saw these ridiculous instruments. There was one book with a bassoon and a marching band. Like,
Mhm.
no. And the instruments didn't look like the instruments, and they had the wrong number of valves and everything. And I thought, this is ridiculous. So I set out to write a book about like introducing the brass band to young children. And my goals were to make it much more diverse, because studies show that when kids see themselves represented,
Mhm.
they see themselves as being able to achieve that goal better. So I wanted every kid to be able to see themselves represented in the book in some way. And I wanted the instruments to look accurate. So I sent, I don't know how many, my illustrator was so patient, because I sent back those illustrations so many times. Thank goodness they were digital, because she could just, erase and redo. But especially the bass trombone and the tubas, man, all of the tubing, where it goes and where it connects, that took a while. Um, and so I had no clue what I was doing at first. And I actually started by writing some ideas on a scrap of paper while I was stuck in the car because my son was asleep. And I just ran inside and grabbed some paper because I thought, I'm going to be in here for a while. So what are my ideas? So I started drawing boxes and kind of plotting out what the storyline would be. And now the book is out. It is incredibly
Mhm.
successful. It's on Amazon worldwide. You can get it on Walmart online, Target online, Waterstones over in the UK. Or, if you want a signed copy, just, shoot me a message on Facebook. I send them out all the time.
She does. She does.
Mhm.
Are there any digital versions yet?
There is not a digital version. I haven't figured out how to make a digital version.
I can help you with that.
Yeah, we can do that.
Talk.
You and
We can
me.
talk.
We'll do it. We'll do it.
Okay. So let's dive into the beginning of that brass band book as you starting out with euphonium. When did you
Okay.
learn how to play euphonium?
So I started on cornet in fifth grade. And I started out on cornet because my grandfather played trumpet. And he played in one of there were several marching bands at Ohio State, but he played in one of the marching bands at Ohio State. And uh so I grew up kind of seeing him playing, Christmas carols or something on trumpet. And then his three sons, my dad and my two uncles, played trumpet. And so I remember brass just being around. They didn't play a ton, but every now and then, they took that trumpet out, and it was a source of pride. And then my cousins, um, I think most of them played uh, brass instruments. A few of them didn't. I think there were two cousins who didn't play brass instruments, but the rest of us were on brass. So sometimes when we were teenagers, we would bring our instruments and put together, crazy mismatched ensembles of, like three horns and a euphonium. Um, so brass was kind of always around. So I started out on cornet and played that for fifth and sixth grade. And then going into seventh grade, my band director did what lots of band directors do. They took their second trumpet player, well, cornet player, and bumped them down to low brass, second and third. So second went to euphonium, third went to tuba. Um, and I remember I got the most like disgusting looking euphonium possible.
Not
It
a
was,
baritone.
it was yeah, it was like the American baritone with a like loop de loop with yeah,
Yeah.
with a bell that goes forward.
Bell front.
Yeah, and it smelled, it was awful. It had a wooden case that I could barely carry, and it would
Uh-huh.
put spinners in my jeans. And I remember at the beginning of the year going into my band director's office and saying, I'm gonna quit. And he said he opened up this brand new euphonium case. It was like a Yamaha, the four valves on the top, which is
Mhm.
like basically the best that most high schoolers get from
The
their
321,
school,
right?
probably. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I could try this for a little bit longer. So I walked out with this brand new, like right out of the bag Yamaha, and it was shiny and silver. And I was like, yeah, I'll give it another try. So here I am, like how many years later, that
Right.
brand shiny euphonium convinced me to stay.
So let's dive in two versions of this. First, when your band director made had you switch over to baritone slash euphonium, when you came home with that big wooden case, what did your parents think?
Great. This is what you're playing now. Like, let's support you.
Oh,
They've
that's
all
awesome.
I think that I think the sousaphone that I took home stretched that a little bit. But the euphonium has always been fine. And to be honest, when I brought home a sousaphone, it was more like, okay, how are we going to do this? It was never like, oh man, don't do this. It's always, how do we make this happen?
What kind of car did y'all have? Do you remember?
I had a Nissan Altima, I think, like a really old one.
Right.
I had to
With the
put like
small
the
trunk.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
that tuba wasn't gonna fit in that.
No, no. I think I did fit it in, but I it wasn't in the case. I had to like it wasn't a nice, it was what we call the toilet the toilet ones. They went to the fiberglass. So I
Right.
took out the case and like just, finagled it back there and
The white one, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that brings back a lot of memories. Oh man. So let's jump to the now. What equipment do you play on right now? What's that euphonium that people can see on your bio page that's right below the link below?
Yeah, I'm a Besson artist and I play the Besson 2051. I have a silver one. It's brand new. I'm looking because if you saw my office, I have like a little tiny space for my feet. And then there's a euphonium, there's a new Wiseman case
Yeah, I
on the
saw that.
side.
That was gorgeous, by the way.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I have two baritones on my left, and I have my current euphonium behind me. But yeah, I play on a Besson 2051, which has a slightly smaller bell. I like it. I think that it has kind of given me it's not as popular as the 2052
Mhm.
with a larger bell. I find that I can project a little bit
Yeah,
easier over an ensemble, and honestly, that's what I do a lot of.
right. You're
Um,
a soloist.
so I love the sound, and I think that it sounds a little bit older. I can make kind of like because bells used to be a little bit smaller, and then they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I feel like I can kind of make that older compact sound when I want to, but the bell is so resonant. The free lead pipe is so resonant that I can pump it out when I want to.
That's really awesome. What did you have when you did you move on from your middle school years to high school with that same 321 or
I think it was sophomore year, no, junior year. Junior year of high school, I got a Miraphone. And I took that through college.
a mirrorphone? Now
Hmm.
that's a lot of student artists are not familiar with that brand when it relates to euphonium and baritone. What had you choose? Was it the price? Was it the availability where you were at?
I didn't know a ton about the different makes and models. So what I did was I went to Woodwind and Brasswind and I had them cover all the logos, and just take them out of the case and put them all in a row. And so I
Oh,
played
you
all of
actually went to the facility in Indiana.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
wow, okay.
Because I grew up in Ohio,
That's
so
your
like it wasn't that
stone's throw
far.
away.
So I went and I had them cover all of the logos and I tried all of them. And After I had it down to two, then I asked what they were, and it was a Besson Sovereign and a Miraphone. I forget what the number was, because I'm horrible with remembering numbers. But
It's okay.
I went back and forth between those two, and I went with the Miraphone. It has a really large wrap, which means
Right.
kind of like how big around,
The body.
yeah, the body. And so I think looking back, I probably should have gone with the Besson, and eventually I found my way.
Right.
But it was a fantastic horn, I think, and it's a great horn for lots of people. But if you can't tell online, but I'm 5 feet tall, so a large wrap euphonium was not the best choice.
So maybe that would be ideal for one of the student artists that are potentially watching this with larger wingspan, larger arms,
Yeah,
could wrap around that horn.
it's something to consider, absolutely, because you have to be comfortable with how you're holding your euphonium,
Hmm.
and it has to feel like an extension of you.
Hmm.
And so the Besson has a smaller wrap, and with my smaller wingspan, with my smaller hug around the euphonium, it fits me perfectly.
So it's really interesting that we're covering this dynamic of instrumentation, because with so many of the other interviews in, we cover that, but that brings me back to the reason why I don't personally play on Yamahas, is because they feel too close, too tight of a body for me. That's why
Mhm.
I have my Midel Weston 451.
Mhm.
It's a much larger bodied horn. I
Yeah.
mean, it was made for DeMondre Thurman, and it's just, oh, I love the horn. And but it's to each person's body type and what they feel comfortable hugging.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be hugging that for a good amount of time
Mhm.
playing, so you have to get comfortable in making that extension. Just like you said, it has to be a natural extension. That was a great point.
Thanks.
Yeah. um so when did you first start taking private lessons for euphonium specifically?
Um, I think it was I think it was shortly after starting. I don't really remember, because I mean it was like, I don't know how many years ago. It was several years ago. So I don't remember specifically when I started, but my parents have always been extremely supportive. Anything that I showed interest in, they went and gave me the best possible. So I give the example of when I wanted to when my dad found out that I liked writing. There was an Atlantic magazine on my desk like 2 days later. So they were always very anxious to support me and whatever. So I remember I started by going to the local community college, and taking lessons with the trombone euphonium. I think he might have been the low brass guy at the community college. With John Olson, it was Kent Stark for those people in Ohio, Kent State branch. And then I remember I would also go to the University of Akron, because that was like the closest larger university, and work with Tucker Jolly, who taught euphonium and tuba. And those were my teachers before I went off to undergrad.
That's awesome. You for the student artist parents that are watching this throughout, us with the reach of this euphonium summit, what I see it happening, I think you really hit a note personally as a parent who has a child, that a student that plays, well, three of them that play instruments. You're going through this as well, which is really awesome. uh, to supporting your student who is just learning or is trying to find their way on this journey, and you may be watching this with them. I sure hope that you're watching this with them, or they show this to you afterwards. And how else could the student artist parent support additionally. I mean, that right there was a critical factor for you. I mean, you lit up when you were talking about how your dad just went out and bought you an Atlantic magazine and put it on your desk 2 days later. That's really awesome. What other ways do you see, or have other parents let you know how they support their student artists?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see in the local mothers Facebook group for the town that I live in, I see parents saying, "My kid is playing fill in the blank instrument. How do I find them lessons? I can't find anyone." Go to your local university, go to your local community college, and there will be someone. And if there isn't someone, then they will point you in the right direction to find someone.
Or you could just go down below and ask questions right here, fill in the blank city where you're living in,
Yeah.
and one of our community members will fill in the blank for
I'll
you.
hook you up. Yeah, yeah.
Or
And when
contact Amy.
well, I mean, right now, like not to make a plug or anything, but now you can take lessons online. And I have students who have I have students in I have two students in Alaska. I have one in Hawaii. I have one in Malaysia. I mean, I gave a multiphonics lesson to someone in Norway. Why not?
Okay,
Why
so
not?
you
You know?
touched on a term that a lot of beginning artists do not know. You said
Mhm.
multiphonics. Can you give a quick descriptor of what that is for our newer audience, especially
So
to the parents? Because that's like beyond a lot of people's like
yeah.
frame of reference.
Yeah. So I wrote some about this on my in my master's paper actually.
Is your master's
Um,
paper accessible, or can I give it away on through the Euphonium Summit here by chance?
well, I'll see if I can. I'll go back through and find it. It was several computers ago. Um, but but the point is that I researched it a decent amount because I basically I did a questionnaire and I asked people who were teaching euphonium, are you teaching these concepts? And overwhelmingly the teacher said no. And then at a certain point, and then I asked people, are you being required to use these skills in your solos? And overwhelmingly they said yes.
Oh wow.
And so like at a certain point no one was teaching it.
Right.
And then we get a solo with like multiphonics or tonality that's outside of major or minor
Right.
or
Atonal.
major, and they haven't practiced any of these things, and all of a sudden they're like, and all the things we learn as educators, we should be teaching little bits of these things so that when they do come up it's not like panic mode. But anyway, multiphonics are when you are singing and playing at the same time. So when you're trying this for the first time, I recommend singing, you know, and then playing and doing that alternately until you can sing usually the same pitch or that you're playing. So some people find it really comfortable to play a higher pitch. Some people find it comfortable to play a lower pitch. You kind of take your own, how your body is doing this, however it comes out at first. Um,
It's
a
gonna
few
seem really awkward. It really
yeah,
will.
yeah. And a few
And the
uh
vibrations.
yeah, a few tips is you're going to have to feel like you're singing very loudly because you're going to be putting two different sets of sound waves into your
Mhm.
instrument, and and the instrument is designed to project what you're buzzing through
Mhm.
it.
Yep.
So you're going to have to sing very loudly in order to hear that. And so have fun with it, play around with it. And I find that it doesn't show up in a whole lot of like undergraduate literature, but there's like a bump. If you go into like upper undergraduate
Yeah.
literature, there's a bump, and all of a sudden there it is.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really nice if maybe you're into kind of undergraduate literature at this point, just mess around with it so it's not a surprise when you get Jan Bach or whatever,
Right.
Lulick Fantasy, so that it's not a surprise when you have some multiphonics show up.
As I'm looking over at my copy of Jan Bach over there on my stand, one thing that I've noticed with multiphonics is one genre of music that really has this like down pat, down to the beat is beatboxers.
Yeah.
Lots of
Yeah.
beatboxer tutorials. That's a great way to start. A lot of
Yeah.
really pro beatboxers on YouTube and stuff like that. And I'm hoping to have some of the interviews composed with some beatboxers to bring that element of those dynamic elements into our personal playing. Because I know several years ago we had a young euphonium artist in the UK go on TED Talks, and you can see the video. I might link it to one of the pages in this summit. I think he's in one of the brass bands in England, if I'm not
Matt White.
mistaken. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Matt White.
Yeah, Matt White. Yeah, yeah. But he kind of put that on the radar of capabilities, and it's really easy, really interesting to see that come forward. So going back to taking lessons and learning under John Olson, Tucker Jolly, and noticing certain elements not being practiced. Where did you go to learn that multiphonics? Was it just on yourself?
Yeah, I just learned it myself. As I that's why I kind of did that questionnaire for my master's project, because it was like I was just kind of thrown in, like, you have multiphonics, like, here you go. And I was thinking, educationally, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I've been taught all of these other things, all of these other skills, and it just seemed odd that I hadn't been taught that. Um, so
How
I
does,
don't know when I specifically learned them.
how does that work into your music theory class? Plug.
that was a plug. We don't the music theory class is frequent is for all kinds of. I teach music theory, for those of you who don't know. I teach music theory classes online quite frequently. I kind of I get together groups of people who are kind of at the same level, and we put together a class. And so we're not talking about multiphonics in the music theory class. We're talking, I might have a harp player. I do tend to have a whole lot of low brass players in my music theory classes because
I
they
wonder
know me.
why.
I wonder why, right? But I might have some piano players. As I said, I had a harp player. I have, whoever in these classes. And currently I have some classes that I'm setting up on Outschool, which is the teaching platform. So I schedule most of my music theory classes on there. So if you're interested, you can find me
On the link
um,
below.
on the link below, you know. But I I find that online I can find those kids and adults who are interested in learning more music theory. And I find that the music theory that we learn in our lessons is so much, this note and this note, it makes this many beats, or, we don't get very advanced in music
Right.
theory in lessons, because that's not really the point. I mean, I always bring up some of these things in my lessons too, but we're not there for music theory lessons. I kind of just tie some music theory into the lesson. So for the people who want to learn music theory, I've learned that there aren't many resources, and there are not many places that kids can go. But yet online, we can take that kid from California and that kid from Toronto and the kid from Miami and stick them all together in the same class. And it works because we're all online. And so I get occasionally some kids. I had a 10-year-old who was solidly into college music theory 3. And he was out in Australia.
Wow.
So occasionally you get some really advanced kids and it's fun, you know. It's kind of I enjoy it because it's learning for learning's sake. You know, you're not being graded, you're not it's low pressure
So
and
it
just
sounds like something both student artists and their parents could enjoy together, perhaps.
absolutely that's a great idea. Yeah.
Kind of like painting with a twist, but music theory with a I don't know. I don't know. Yeah,
Right,
that'd be
right.
fun. It'd be
Yeah.
fun. So
Yeah.
when did you first realize that you wanted to do this as a dream job, a dream career?
Um I when I was growing up, I was between wanting to be a journalist or a writer and wanting to be a musician. Um,
All the
yeah,
above.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, who would have thought? Um, so I remember I decided I wanted to go into music because when I saw myself as a journalist, I saw myself doing like little stories and fun stories. But when I saw myself as a musician, I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to be up in front of an ensemble. I wanted to be first chair. And so I think that was my sign that that's what I wanted to be doing. And so I told my parents I also I always wanted like an education component to it in some way. I didn't know what it would be. Um, so I started out, I went to Capital University. It's in Ohio, in Columbus. And I started majoring in music education. And then I added performance. And then I also started playing trombone too. So Capital is a private school, and I got significant scholarship money, but the scholarship money was done in 4 years. So I graduated with a double major with essentially a trombone minor in 4 years.
That's incredible.
So but I didn't know what, and then I when I graduated, I didn't know if I wanted to go into the job market or if I wanted to go to grad school. And so I thought to myself, I will audition at my dream schools. If I get in at my dream schools, I'm gonna go on. If I don't, I'm gonna go in teaching. And I want to emphasize that I never saw teaching as the backup plan. It was just that one had to be more timely than the other.
Right.
I had to audition, you know, at a certain time, and that was before school was largely done. And so then if I didn't get into those schools, then I would go and get a teaching job. So it wasn't a backup or anything. So at that point, I told my friend Pat Stuckmeyer, we were talking through AIM because that's how people used
Right.
to, you know. So I was talking to him, and uh, he said, "What are you playing for your senior recital?" And I said the LRB and a few other pieces, and he said, "That's on the audition list for the Royal Northern College of Music." And I was like, "Oh no, you're not saying that." And he's like,
Uh-huh.
"Yes."
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Oh my gosh." He's like, "You should do it, you should do it." And he was
Yeah.
there at the time. So I emailed Steve Mead to see if I could get an audition, and I think he was busy, he didn't email me back or something. And then Pat Stuckmeyer dropped my name and said, "Okay, I dropped your name, now email him." So I emailed him right afterwards, and he was going to be in Battle Creek for brass band of Battle Creek, and
Mhm.
it was the weekend after my senior recital.
Oh, wow.
So he was like, "Is Battle Creek close?" And I joked that he could have been like, "Is California close?" And I would have been like, "Yes, yes, absolutely, I will be there. I will be there for the audition." So I auditioned. I got in. Clearly, if you can read my bio, I got in.
Mhm.
I had an
The
audition
link below.
I want to also share that I auditioned at Indiana and I did not get in. So we always share our successes, and so I make sure that I share kind of the things that didn't work out. I didn't get into Indiana, but I already gotten into the Royal Northern College of Music, which was like so much of a level of dream
Yeah.
school that they're even dream, if that makes sense.
So
So
a lot of the beginner artists or even high schoolers, I know as even when I was going to college for Euphonium, I didn't know about Stephen Mead and those resources all the way out there across the pond, as a lot of us older folks know those terminologies. Um, these things exist outside, and Stephen Mead is the epitome of community and euphonium, and just an amazing icon for euphonium. So being able to study under him, uh being in the same room with him, even, he's just got such a joy for life, a zeal for passion for euphonium. It's really cool. How is that, seeing that live though, every day?
um it was it was a completely different experience from school in the US. We had very few classes, lots of practice time. I got a lesson with Steve every week. Um, and he would fly in from wherever he was, and then he would drop off his clothes at the laundromat. They would do his laundry and then repack him. And he would go to the school and teach. And we used to joke
Wow.
he'd get through the class list and teach us, and then if he got to the bottom and it wasn't time to go back to the airport to go to the next place he was going, he would start back up at the top
Oh man.
again. And so whichever grad student, because the grad students went first,
Double
if
time.
if that person got the call, they'd text everyone else. Be like, he's starting back at the top, guys. And we'd like study something and like, oh, what am I gonna bring? What am I gonna bring? And then it only happened twice, but when it happened, like everyone rallies, they're like, go, go, go.
You can
Um,
do it.
yeah. And then I got a lesson with Dave Thornton just about every other week. He was the other euphonium professor there. And so we had so if you're keeping tally, 1 to 2 lessons with Steve Mead a week, 1 lesson with Dave Thornton every other week. And then we had 2 hours of euphonium class with Dave and 2 hours of euphonium class with Steve.
That's
And
so different than, yeah.
we also had a warm-up class with Steve whenever he was in town. So we would have we looked at, in this euphonium class, it was a repertoire class, but it was also a music history class where we learned about the history of different ensembles. We learned about the history of different pieces, different bands, the history of the euphonium. We would look at the music theory behind a specific section and figure out why is this transition so hard to tune? Well, it's this chord going to this chord and going to this chord, and you have this part of the chord on top, and it's very difficult. So this is how you tune this as you're going through this section.
Wow.
um and so I looked at most of my subjects through the lens of a euphonium player. As opposed to in the US, I think when we go to music history, it's music history of the orchestra, the choir, piano. We don't learn a whole lot of wind band, and we certainly don't learn a whole lot of brass band. Um, and so after not seeing euphonium in my music history classes for 4 years of undergrad, going to the UK, and suddenly learning specifically euphonium everything was fantastic.
That's a jewel right there. I can't wait to dive into more of that at a later discussion, because that's a whole another episode that I would love to have you back on. Wow, that's just fantastic. So when you're going through that and solidifying that as your dream career, when you came back,
Mhm.
where what was that next step of like, okay, this is definitely my ideal career, this is my dream?
Yeah. So I moved to the US just about in 2009. It was the end of 2008. And I moved in to my apartment in Philadelphia because my now husband was finishing up his degree out there. And with the recession, we thought a larger population center would probably be a smart move. And it was. So I got off the bat, I got a job in general music. Um, and I was teaching private lessons, doing general music, and playing in the Atlantic Brass Band. And gradually, they gave me more and more responsibility and let me solo a few times, and I could kind of slowly step that up more and more. And at a certain point, I left my general music education, my general music job, because we moved east and that job was way out west beyond the city. So that didn't work anymore. But I kept on teaching private lessons. And at some point, I got a job at the local community college. And I started looking into going back to get my doctorate. So I auditioned at Rutgers. I got in. And that's when I got the call. Tyrone Bruniger had passed away. And that was a moment because part of you is just feeling like in the dumps because it's Tyrone Bruniger, who euphonium player, trombone player in the Philadelphia Orchestra, someone I looked up to a ton. I remember saving up money to buy his album when I was in high school. But also the fact that Tyrone Bruniger taught euphonium at the college that was 25 minutes away, the same college that I had been playing euphonium at for Atlantic Brass Band. And so it was like half of you is feeling, upset at his passing, and half of you was like, oh my gosh, go, get everything, situated, because this is your chance. So I got all my materials together and applied. I was, I think, 26. I was like, I think I was significantly younger than all of the other applicants. We're all kind of like chilling together in the conference room waiting for our turn at the audition. And I was the only woman there, and I was probably a foot shorter than all of them too. Um, and Rowan University is close enough to DC that we had some people.
Yeah, the higher, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I went in and was like, well, this is the time. And I got the gig. I got the job. I was at Rowan for 9 years, and that was kind of my launching point. I think that because that gave me turns as a faculty member to solo when I wanted to, and that gave me kind of the platform to create, and to perform whenever I wanted to.
Okay.
So, yeah, whenever I wanted to put something together, I could, because I had those resources. And so from there, I started getting more solo gigs, more clinician gigs, going out with frequently my fellow members of Atlantic. A band might hire like the section leaders from Atlantic um, to come out and work with a brass band for something, or I would be a guest lecturer at another college and solo with the band or something like that. And so those gigs started coming in. And so that was kind of my in, to expand that network and get out there more and more. So I moved to Ohio recently from New Jersey, and it was a little scary because it was like Rowan was my platform, and gave me all these opportunities. And am I going to be able to make this jump away from a college and keep this going? And I have. I've been hired to do. I've soloed with an orchestra. I have gone out and played, especially the Lucy Pankhurst piece. I've played that with three different ensembles now. Um, I'm doing a lot of this solo and clinician work that I love doing. And I feel like I'm very fortunate. I feel like I'm living the dream.
Precisely, and that's exactly what I hope to have inspired through bringing artists like yourself and all the ones that have collaborated and contributed to the Euphonium Summit. I wanted to bridge back into the beginner artists and the families. Some key words that you brought up that may not necessarily have, are in their vernacular or the vocabulary. Gigs as music jobs.
Mhm.
I mean, as we really take advantage of every opportunity we can to play at a restaurant or a church or any venue, any open space, any closed space for that matter. Anybody that'll have us is a gig. And I mean, even at your business dinner, your company's luncheon, or a holiday recital, or anything can be classified as a gig to give your student artists a chance to get known and get that playing ability like really ramped up there. And just there are some phenomenal ways to activate your student and their talent that they've been developing for 1 to 5 to however many years. What are you're I've got around 30 plus years on Euphonium. You're about the same or thereabouts. A lot of us as artists, we really, it's our hope and ambition is to see all these student artists really take on this mantle of, yes, I am an artist. And it's not about, well, I can't do this, I can't do. How can you do this? How can you make something happen? And if you're not sure, just ask. Drop a comment below, ask a question. How can I be more prominent in my local area, or get involved in a brass band? And that was another term that I really wanted to get our parents and student artists used to for brass bands, because they hear concert band, they hear marching band, they hear solo ensemble sometimes in beginner, or even community bands if they're lucky enough to be in a community like Dublin, or locally here where I'm at near Copper's Cove, Texas, the Harker Heights Band Room, or wherever it may be. Is how can what is a brass band specifically? You're like one of the experts on this, seeing how just take it, just go.
I will take it. So a brass band, there are several different kinds of brass bands. When you hear the term brass band, it could mean a group of players down in New Orleans. It could mean a group of players, maybe in like Brazil. It could mean several different things. What we're talking about right now is called a British brass band. It was started in the UK a little more than 200 years ago, um, as basically their form of kind of a community band that usually was made up of people who were working in the same coal mine or factory. They'd get off work and they couldn't go home and watch TV or whatever. So as kind of entertainment and to keep morale up, they would play in a brass band. Over time, the instrumentation became standardized. And if you can imagine, think of the different factories in your hometown or the different places where people work. People mingled, and you can only imagine, with people mingling in different bands, it only took so long for somebody to say, pretty sure my brass band can play better than yours. So started getting together for competitions. And competitions are kind of a fun way of challenging ourselves within a brass band to play our best. It is not necessary to go to a competition to be a brass band. It's just an aspect of brass bands. But the cool thing about brass bands that I want to bring up to everyone who's listening is that in a brass band, the euphonium is one of the most important parts in the band. So when you're in wind ensemble and you're playing half notes in and you're just kind of like can I have something else? You can look for a brass band, because the brass band is the euphonium part in a brass band is very frequently lined up with the cornet part. So the melody, the euphoniums get the melody, the euphoniums get what I call the noodly bits, where and they're moving along scales and stuff like
The
that.
fun stuff.
The fun stuff. And youth brass bands are the fastest growing kind of group of brass bands out there. Brass bands are growing a ton in the US. I know I said that it started in the UK, but we have brass bands in Canada, we have brass bands in the US, we have brass bands, a ton of them in Japan. There are brass bands all over England. They're everywhere now. And so this style of brass band is really taking off as an ensemble. The literature is being churned out. So if you have look to see if there's a brass band, a British style brass band around you, if you want to be challenged as a euphonium player. If you're in an area that doesn't have a British style brass band, a few things you can do. You can easily adapt the British brass band parts by taking the instrument. There's an instrument called a tenor horn, which is pitched in E flat.
I have
By taking those and bumping them up to F, you can play them on French horn. And you can take there's an E flat tuba part. And so you can just play those on either euphonium, or you can play those on a smaller, maybe an F tuba. And then boom, you can have a brass band played by instruments that you would have in your band. Another thing is just look up some brass bands and listen to them, because you can listen to things, even if you're not near a brass band, you can listen to brass bands and you can hear what they're doing, how they're creating sound. You can listen to what kind of repertoire they're playing. You can learn a lot. How are they blending? What's their style? And you can learn a lot even if you don't have a brass band in your area and you just listen to some of those best brass bands out there.
And we can, if you want to find out more about brass bands, Dr. Amy has a link below for her own brass band that's on there. Is it live? It's live, right?
Dublin. So yeah, so I have to update the dates. We went through a transition with our website, so hopefully the new dates will be up there.
By the time this is.
Yeah, but the Dublin Youth Brass Band is fantastic. We're a pay optional band, so it really is that
pay them the premium.
so yeah,
it's basically fundraising. You're raising funds for your own existence as a pay for play, as you will.
Yeah. So if people don't have the funds, if people don't have, we have instruments, we have everything is set up. So there are some kids that literally just walk in the door and here you go. It's great.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Oh man, there's so many things to go dive into, like off of just that one right there. You spoke about all the practice sessions with Steve Mead and Dave Thornton and stuff like that. Did you all work on stretching, breathing, mindset when it comes to, and some mindset with how certain things fit in within the overall context, but like mindset as in preparing you for your practice time. As it relates to our beginner artists, like how would you bridge that across to the younger students, how to get in that mindset of practicing?
Yeah. Um, I when we did warm-up classes with Steve, we would do stretches, we would do breathing exercises. Sometimes we would get our heart rate up by jumping around or doing jumping jacks, which we all really appreciated at 8 in the morning. When I'm on my own, getting ready to
Jumping
practice.
jacks.
I
No
don't do
jumping
jumping
jacks.
jacks. No jumping jacks. um, but I do you when you ask me this question, like it flashed through my mind various habits that I have. Some of them are just, it may look like I'm just walking around and I'll just kind of, I just want to like make sure that I'm loose and I'm comfortable because I'm about to take out 11 pounds ish of metal and interact with it. So if my back is tense, if my shoulders are tight, this is going to make it worse. So I don't make a big deal out of it. I'm not like, hey, everyone, I'm stretching. But I do find that I kind of swing my arms, I kind of roll my shoulders a little bit. I kind of make myself loose and just kind of make sure that I'm comfortable. Um, and that's something that I do. And I found over time that that gets me in the mindset too. It's like I'm now kind of like I'm kind of loose and I'm ready to go. This is my habit. As for the mindset of practicing and the mindset of playing too, I have an author that I would recommend. He wrote several books that are probably just fine for those of you who are high school to digest. I have trouble with his name, but I've heard it. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He has done research into what's called flow state and hyper focus mode. And what he said was sometimes when we're doing something that is just the right amount of challenge and that we get excited about meeting that challenge. And we go into what's called flow state. And I'm sure all of us have been in flow state. It's where we're so
Especially
in.
on video games,
Yeah.
younger artists.
Yeah. It's when we're so into something that time passes and we're like, "Oh, I lost track of time." You were probably in flow state. So we can establish triggers, I do my little, that kind of signals to me like this is time to focus and I've taught my brain to go into that state to because it's time to focus, it's time to practice. And over time you can get better at getting into that focused state of working on stuff that you're learning. So this is something that has taken me quite some time, but you can learn about it. The book was very readable. He has several books, but you can
I'll
read.
put all the links below.
Yeah, you can learn about it. And you can kind of figure out how your body works. And I would encourage you because I know if you're here to learn more about euphonium and if you're here and you're interested in all these things, I am willing to bet that you found yourself in flow state playing euphonium at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Favorite piece, definitely not hot cross buns, but
right. But it has to be kind of like you're trying to achieve something, you're working on that piece that you really want to learn how to play. So I would encourage you to check out that stuff and kind of learn about maybe how is there something that helps you to focus, because it may be that doing your stretches before you play or something might trigger your brain to say it's time, this is practice time and I'm going to focus now. So I like having kind of that routine and it tells my brain it's time. Now, for me right now, I have two little kids. So flow, I don't get to do that, but um but it's a valuable skill to have. And when the kids are off at school, then I'll get back to it.
right, right. I
Right.
understand that completely. Oh man, that's really great value. Yeah, I'll put the links to the books below, so you can go check that out and possibly pick one up for your student artist, or for even if it's your boyfriend or girlfriend or a significant other that really enjoys euphonium playing, and they've just done it as a hobby. Hint, hint, anniversary, birthday gift. Hey, I caught this on a podcast, I caught this on a summit, you know, here you go. Really cool gift. I mean, I would love my wife to get me these books, so maybe she'll see these. Just a hint for a birthday gift or something, whatever. Um, I'm sure you have all these specific books in your library of what did you say? 820, 821?
868, I think it was.
868 was the final number, yeah.
I mean, I wrote a children's book. You can tell that like that I like children's books, and my mom taught first grade for years. So
So
we
did you count magazines in that number by chance?
no.
This is a really side note to a conversation. So back to the topic, we've already covered equipment that you started with and grew through. What apps are you recommending your student artists to utilize in practicing and their daily habits?
Use tonal energy tuner. Absolutely. I used to require every one of my college students to have it. I think the most useful part of it is there's you can go, excuse me, you can go into the metronome, and you can start your metronome, and then you can swipe over from the side, and you can record yourself playing. And then you can stop your metronome after you're done playing, and then you can slow yourself down in the recording and play it back.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I used to have when I was teaching the college students, and I occasionally do it to my high school students. Notice I say I occasionally do it to them because they don't like it, but it's very useful.
Yeah.
I would have them play their Clark studies
Uh-huh.
with a metronome, and then play it back slower, because it's so hard. It's so hard in real time to hear if we got something right, like myself included. I record myself all the time and play it back, because sometimes what we hear in our head and what is coming out of our bell is different. And so when we're practicing, having that ability to play it back is fantastic. And then having the ability to slow it down and have the metronome playing so that we can hear, wow, every time I go from second valve to open, I'm too fast. Or every time I go from open to 1, 2, and 3, I'm late. So having that knowledge is fantastic, because then you can kind of even it out by maybe like I call it swinging and rinky tinking it. When you swing it, you swing it dun da dun da dun da dun da dun da, and then once you get comfortable with that, you go da 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 da. And that gives you more time between every other note to think about what's coming, and then you smooth it out, and it's like magic. You can play it smoothly. But having that tonal energy tuner app, it's fantastic. I also utilize the drone feature. So there's a feature where you can have two notes play,
Mhm.
and I would have the note, if you know what key you're in, you want to play the note of that key. Make sure you're in concert pitch. And then you go to the fifth note. You count up 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 is the note that you're on, and you go up 2, 3, 4, 5, and you sustain both of those. And then I like putting my earbud in one ear so I can really hear it, and I can hear my playing through the other ear. And then I'll play through a section, and it's really great for getting that intonation worked out.
That's really great because that also brings in multiphonics right there. Oh man, that's because that also brings in the whole how important is solfege or even musical numerical notations. with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, how often do you use that in your practicing and your teaching?
So I go frequently with the system of the kids. So sometimes they come to me with what's called fixed do,
Yeah.
especially outside of the US, where C is always do and D is always re. Or we can have movable do. So whatever key you're in, that first pitch is going to be
No,
do. Um, so I use it honestly more in my music theory stuff that I teach than my lessons. When I do in my lessons is I'll usually go over, I have a piano, you can't see because the background, but
yeah.
I have a keyboard. And so I go over to the keyboard and we'll play that pitch, we'll sing it and then play it on the euphonium. So I do that more on euphonium than solfege. I think that solfege is a fantastic tool. I think the reason I don't use it more in my lessons is because I find that my kids that I'm teaching haven't fully gotten comfortable with it, and you have to get fully comfortable with it first. So
Mhm.
those of you who are listening, it would be valuable to have that skill because your teachers know it. Most of your teachers know it and can use it, but if you are still learning it, it's difficult to pull that out as a tool. It's just
Yes,
another tool in the toolbox. We might not always use it, but when it would be a time that would be helpful, it would be nice to be able to pull that tool out.
absolutely. And start preparing yourself for that, especially if this is going to be something that the student artist is wanting to evaluate this as a long-term career or option for monetizing it down the road.
Mhm. If you're going to college in as a music major or a music minor, you will have to know solfege.
Mhm.
So you can learn it when you're in college, or you can jump ahead and start getting comfortable with it now and use it now.
Absolutely. And if you don't know where to start, just drop a question in the box below. We'll figure it out together. Right?
Yes.
So that really was all the way down to the sight reading also, and getting to learn the articulations, the phrasing, um, the breathing. You've already covered a lot of those elements. Um, and even when you started teaching others to play, um, we've covered a lot of the questions. One question that we kind of hit on at throughout our interview here is the opportunities that are so prevalent for euphonium students now as opposed to when we are going through school and such like that, or in the future. Like, what can our euphonium student artists take advantage of now as far as opportunities to learn, like dropping comments below, or the competitions that are throughout the world now. I mean, there's so many creative ways of finding financing for those student artists that do make those final rounds, that there are people in our community that will fund your vision, fund your dream, if that's what you so desire.
Mhm.
Share your passion. Um, what opportunities do you see euphonium artists, current, new, those of us in our older years that are pursuing it as a hobby, maybe?
Mhm.
What do you see? I mean, you brought up brass band. That's a great opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What other opportunities do you see?
Yeah. So I think I just got back from the Brass Chamber Music Workshop out in California. And there were, I think it was 12 work study positions that went unclaimed.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. 12.
What?
It was,
So for our families and student artists, what does work study mean?
so it's simply because it's held at a university. So these to take advantage of the work study stuff, you work in the library at the brass chamber music workshop. And this, to give you a little bit of background, this is the largest brass chamber music library in the world with over 7,000 brass chamber pieces. So working in the library is awesome.
Yeah.
So 5 hours during the week you work and you get, I think it's $250 off tuition for the week.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And 12 of them went unclaimed. So that is, I think it's a hidden gem. It's up in the redwoods of Northern California, usually in mid to late July. So definitely look at that. It's at Cal Poly Humboldt.
We'll put the
Um,
link down below.
yeah, check it out. The other thing, I think another hidden gem is the International Women's Brass Conference, because I think people think that you have to be a woman to go.
That's supporting.
Yeah, so it's a conference for supporting women in brass. So the competitions are all open to anyone. And it'll, the pieces that you play will probably be written by women because it's a conference to support women, composing for brass instruments and stuff like that. But everyone is welcome. And that organization has the same funding for prize money as some huge competitions.
Global.
Um, yeah, yeah. But the competitions tend to be a little bit smaller because it's still kind of developing and getting the name out there, and people are finally realizing that you don't have to be a woman to participate. Um,
Big opportunity.
it's a
Yeah.
fantastic opportunity. Um, and they have
Auditions.
mock military band auditions and mock orchestral auditions, and those have cash prizes too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so they have and the judges are straight from military bands and from orchestras.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to try out, if you're kind of building up to try to get into a military band, or maybe audition for an orchestra or something, that's a hidden gem. There are other things, obviously, ITEA and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The regional conferences that they put on are great, but lots of people know about those, and lots of people are there. Sometimes finding some of those competitions and those venues that there aren't as many people is a kind of a chance to get you some more feedback and some more attention. Um, I do want to say that I was co-chair of ITEC's Young Artist Tuba Euphonium competition. I was the euphonium half of that. There were 3 entries. 3. Can I say it again? 3. um, so that's another one that you would have thought that there would be.
Yeah,
I
thousands.
Yeah, there were 3. So that's another one that I would strongly encourage you. And they're working on linking. They've started linking that to the Leonard Falcone competition,
Wow.
choosing most of the same
Same
literature.
repertoire. Yeah, I've seen
I
that over
changed,
the
I
years.
changed one thing. I wanted the Horovitz to be in there because I wanted to have a chestnut in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I put one of the movements of the Horovitz in there, but they're working to have both of those competitions have very similar literature. So I would advise you to sign up for both of those because it's a double whammy. You have 2 competitions for the same pieces.
And so a really cool trick that I've learned as a personal librarian and having a large repertoire is when you start playing where you're at right now as a student artist just beginning or in those first years, start looking at these competitions and going ahead and Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, go ahead and start utilizing those as pieces that you're going to want your student to have access and have a copy of, because it's
Absolutely.
illegal to play copied pieces. I don't authorize that at all. Have the original, and a lot of these competitions you have to have the original to play. So go ahead and get those birthday gifts out of the way and get those pieces knocked out and put them in a collection. If they do decide to play, hey, this is a great graduation gift into high school or graduation gift into college. Or if they don't and they don't even know that you've collected these, there's a whole market of euphonium players that would love to have that collection you just put together. And they're willing to pay for that because you took that time to procure those, to get those pieces. One last thing on our Euphonium Summit with Dr. Amy Bliss. Thank you so much for joining us on at Farm for Dreams and providing this amazing content and great interview. Any final thoughts, sayings, principles that have made a tremendous impact on you as a euphonium player? If it's in regards to practice, performance, or transcends and like drips into your daily life that you want to impart on our audience?
Yeah. I have one final thing. I used to keep quotes that Steve Mead said to me in lessons, and he was hilarious in lessons. So one of the funny things he said was, "You sound like you're riding a motorcycle with square wheels," because I was playing like a robot. But one of the nice things he said that has stuck with me is he said, "Play your instrument like you're telling a story. Connect with your audience. If your audience isn't connecting with your performance, it's because you're not telling the story. You're not letting your perspective shine through. Go past the notes and the rhythms and the dynamics and tell your story."
That's amazing. What an end to a wonderful interview. Thank you, Dr. Amy Schumaker Bliss, for
Thank you for having
gracing us.
me.
And yeah, can't wait to have you on again. So many more questions. Look forward to the follow-up, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks
Great.
everyone for joining us.